Good afternoon, parents, and welcome to another St Austin's presentation. This evening is about early reading and phonics in Key Stage 1. And tonight, Mrs Kendrew and Miss Tickle are going to take you through how we teach reading and phonics across Key Stage 1 and talk to you a little bit about the the little Wandle scheme that we use in school. No longer are we floppy phonics, we're now little Wandle. Ladies, good evening, and over to you.
Thank you very much. So for those families, parents in year 1 and year 2, well, second one, you will know that last year we did a floppy phonics scheme. We have changed our phonics scheme to little Wandle. Not because floppies didn't work, we just found this one to work better. It fits more with our approach, and the teachers are all enjoying teaching it a lot more. And the children are responding really well. So it's not that floppies was wrong, it's just that we found a scheme that fits our school better. So I'm just going to give you a quick, oh no, I pressed the wrong button, sorry. Anyone who was on online learning with me will know that I cannot do this, thank you. So basically we're still trying to foster that love of reading. We want our children to be successful, and the only way they can access anything in anything really is to be able to read. Obviously all other subjects are supported by the good reading skills, so reading really is the most important thing that we teach the children lower down in school. Oh God, I've done it again, sorry. Help me, Sarah. If you think as well how many times you've read today, we read all the time. The children read, you read bus times, you read the newspaper, you read your phone, you see messages, packaging, labels, everything is all about reading. And the children are very good at reading the shop signs and things like that they see in everyday life. It's just trying to train their skills and hone their skills in to be able to read for pleasure and read books and things that are more purposeful. So we do that through phonics. So our new scheme is Little Wandle. It teaches exactly the same as floppy phonics, it's just slightly different, a slightly different format. It's more of an approach for reading and writing rather than just the writing that floppy phonics seemed to focus on last year. Obviously, we're trying to teach the children to have connections between sounds, why we teach the sounds as we teach them, and then to write them down. I went on some really good training where they say that reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out, so that the two go hand in hand. So we need to make sure that as we teach them a sound, we also teach them how to write it, so they can do both things at the same time. There's lots of terminology that the children will be coming home starting to talk about. These will all be on our school website, and we will also add them to Dojo after this meeting, just so that you've got access to those terms. The children are very good at knowing these, aren't they? Yeah. And they use them in their everyday talk, in everyday language. When we're trying to read, we teach them to use the phrase diagraph, so that they know that the spot in a diagraph, which is 2 letters that make one sound. They know a trigraph is 3 letters that make one sound. They know that they blend to read, and they know that they segment to write, so that they're getting more and more confident with using these terms. And it's something that we use right from reception all the way through school. So this is the how we teach the code. So it's obviously got reception at the beginning, and then it shows you where we pick up year 1 through to the end of year 1. Obviously, there are some children at the end of year 1 who still need to have a bit of phonics, and obviously we make sure that they still have those phonics sessions. But the plan is that every child finishes year 1, passing their phonics screening check, and is ready to open through that reading gate and ready to read for pleasure. So this also will go on, it's already on the website, but we'll add it to Dojo as well, just so you can see what sounds your child will be taught, and so you can help as well at home. So we make learning stick by doing it all the time, don't we?
We do, yeah.
So it's something that we do. We teach phonics in the morning, but it's then recapped before dinner time. We do it again in the afternoon. They learn using little phrases. We teach them groups so that they know that all the alternative sounds, so the alternatives for E, there is an example. And we also teach them tricky words. We use sound buttons. So there's lots of ways that the children can hone their skills to be able to read successfully. I've got this now. So when we're teaching phonics in the classroom, we teach them using our reading routine, which is different to last year. So we will spot in the code, saying the sounds, reading the words. I forgot about it. Now we spot the diagraph. So when we're looking at a word first, we encourage the children to spot the diagraph. So we would say, spot the diagraph. So the children will go, sh, ah. Then they'll say the sounds, sh, ah, k. And then we push the word forward and they read it sharp. Okay, we do that. That's our reading routine. So we spot the diagraphs, say the sounds, read the words. That's what we say to the children all the time to help them to be able to read any word we get. We also have another technique which we use. Miss Tickle's very good at this bit.
I'm trying to find our favourite word.
Yeah, this is it, yeah.
Okay, so words such as this, which are particularly long, we can chunk it up. Shall I say like that? So we cover part of the word, okay, and we would still spot the diagraph, say the sounds, read the word. So sh, sh, shim. Then we'd cover that bit up. Shimmer. So we chunk it up so it makes it a little bit easier. Sometimes by the time we've got to this diagraph, we've forgotten the start of the word. So it's been really clear that we can still go back and do this. Even when it comes to do it in our head, we can cover part of the sound up, read, blend it, cover that bit up, do the second part, and then put the two together.
So we obviously have words that are not straightforward. They are quite tricky words.
Yeah.
That we obviously expect the children to be able to read, even if they're following the same reading routine. Spot the diagraph, say the sound, read the word.
Shall I also say on that one? So such as a word as that, we would chunk it up, but in that one you can see that there's no diagraph. So if there's not a diagraph or a trigraph, we just get them to shake their heads. So whereas before when we'd actually say the diagraphs and then we'd say the sounds, if there isn't a diagraph or a trigraph, we'd just start by saying the sounds.
Thank you. Okay. And obviously in school, we teach the tricky words, and we just teach tricky words as they are. You can't sound those out. We'll tell the children which part of the word is tricky. I've lost my pile of tricky words now. So we'll do the tricky words, but we tend to just do those as flashcards. So the children will just read them by rote. So it's like to, into, she, no, be, we, he, of, to. So we just flashcard the children that just so they recognise that they are the tricky words. You can't sound them out. There's no sound buttons on it. You just have to learn to read those words, which is why a lot of those will get sent home for spelling, because they're the words the children just, there's no like rhyme or reason to them. They just need to learn to read them and to write them. Okay, spelling. So when we're teaching spelling, we obviously teach the children to segment. So they will say the sound. So we might use our segmenting fingers, which is similar to what we did last year. So if we were trying to write the word cheap, we would say to the children, what's the first diagraph? Ch. Second diagraph, E. Last sound, ch, eep. So there's three. So they'll have three fingers up, so they will know that they've got three sounds to write. It might not be three letters, it's three sounds. And the children are getting really good at doing that. They started that in reception, so it's something that they can already do. And obviously the children that are in year 2, they did that last year through floppy phonics. So reading has changed. So obviously last year we were sending books home and asking you to do the reading practice. Now it's totally different. So the children read in school 3 times a week in a group. It's not one-to-one like it was previously, so it's 3 times a week. So obviously the aim is to get them to want to read books like this. But obviously to get there, we need to practice our skills. So the children read in school with an adult 3 times a week. So the first day is a decoding, so they might be looking at the book. Sorry, this is just one I picked off myself. So we will go over the sounds again that are in that book. We'll go over there you go. We'll go over the words. There's tricky words and there's vocab. Just that's particular for that book. So they get that part of the session, and then we go through reading it. Now, when we're reading, we ask the children to use their reading finger so that they can keep their place in the story, and they read. So the first time, obviously, there's lots of sounding out because it's a new book and they're not quite sure of it. So they will read it. They read at their own pace, and the teachers go around the group and listen to them read. The second time we read it, we are looking for prosody, which is reading for expression. So if it's our storyteller voice or our David Attenborough voice, if it's a non-fiction book, that's kind of what we say to the children. So we would teach them about punctuation. If there's an exclamation mark, we teach them to use a loud voice or a story voice, and they're getting really good at reading. They do love a story.
They do.
So especially this one, it's got bangs, so we'd expect them to make their voice louder. Obviously, the teacher demonstrates, and then they have a go too. And then on the third read, they read it for fluency. So it's just and comprehension. There's a few questions, and we might say just to make sure that they've understood what they've read. So why do you think that's happening? Who do you think's doing that? Can you find the page where this is on? So we're really asking them to understand the story, and then obviously we then assign the book as an ebook. Unfortunately, we have to assign the ebooks because we need to have the actual physical copies in school. These are beautiful brand new books that the children are using, and we just don't. If they don't get brought back, we won't be able to use it for another group the next day, the next week. So that's why we're just currently using the ebooks. Hopefully, if we can raise some money, we'll be able to send the books home. But at the moment, that's just where we are at the moment. But on the other side, you get to bring home a lovely storybook from the library that the children are reading. That fits into what they've chosen to read, and obviously they're the stories that you read to your child. It's not for them to read, it's for you to read, and it's just to really give them that really nice time to just read and listen to a story at bedtime. I know my children like to have a snuggle up before bedtime, have a story time. So the ebook is for them to read at home to you. They should know it because they've read it 3 times in school. It should sound easy, and if it is easy, then we've done our job. We have done what we need to do, because we want them to come home and go, "Yay, look, I can read my book," and just
Listen
read it.
To me read.
Yeah. It's I know I've sent books home, and I know I'm a parent of somebody who comes home with a book, and I'm like, "Oh, they can't read it," and it's awful. It's really bad because you're having to stop, you're having to try and do the teacher bit, and actually that's what we don't want to do. We want them to come home so proud and be able to say, "Look, I can read my book," and read it to you. So you're not into the teacher bit. So that's the plan. So if it feels like it's too easy, that's okay, because they've done the hard bit in school. Sorry, I've got off piece now. So all the children get assessed. So at the moment, we're currently assessing the children again. So every 6 weeks on this programme, the children are assessed, and we just maybe might have to move them up, move them down to where their reading should be, and then we know where we need to practice our catch-up in the afternoon, just to plug any gaps where the children may have missed a few sounds or a few of the skills that we've taught them. But it is a programme that assessment is taking place every 6 weeks. So that's, sorry, I've already talked about that bit. I got a bit carried away. So they should be reading. So if we send a book home, when they're reading in school, the book has to be 90% accurate, which is 1 word wrong in 10. So even when they're reading in school, they're not sounding out every word. We want them to be able to read it. There's nothing worse than you pick a book up and you can't read it yourself. You're like, what is this? And that's just going to switch it off. And if they're sounding it all out, there's not going to be any comprehension, because they will lose the flow of their reading.
It's something we do in phonics in that, isn't it, as well? So once they say, for instance, they've done this word, and we've done the sounding out, and then we've pushed it forward the second time round, we're doing the reading routine again, but they're doing it in their heads. So, for example, the children would be going, shower. So they're doing it, but they're not actually saying it out loud. So they're used to, when it comes to the third time, they will see that word, and we'll just push it forward and say the word shower. So it's building that fluency of, oh, I know that word, I don't need to sound it out again, because I've got a chance to do it in my head. I just want to say what that word is.
Yeah. And also, as an adult, I know when I get to words I don't know, you do sound it out in your head. You do think, or else you'll chunk it up to make it. So that's what we want to teach them to do without our voices in the head. Sound it out. And then this is just a little bit really for reading at home, just to say how important it is. And, it's something that you can do with any books that you have, anything that your child is interested in. And it just shows you that, any books they're exposed to by the age of 6 is a positive predictor of their reading ability 2 years later. So the more books the children hear, and not reading, but the more books that the children hear, the more chance they've got of being able to use that language and that vocabulary in their everyday life, and also in their work as well. So even if they hear a word that they're like, I don't know what that is, the next time they hear it, they might be able to think, oh, that goes with that. So that's kind of why we need to read to them as often as we can. So I'm sorry, I've already said that. So the children are coming home with an ebook and a storybook that they can change as often as they like. So the storybook is for them to have read to them, and the ebook is obviously what they read to you. I've said all this. Look, I've got a bit carried away. On the website as well, there are also examples of how to say the sounds really clearly. This is probably more for reception, but they do have a section on phase 5, which is what we're teaching year 1, just so that you can say those sounds really clearly. Which, if the clearer you say it, the easier it will be for the children to then use when they're sounding out and blending words themselves. So I've said all of this. I'm so sorry. I've got carried away with myself. So reading at home, anytime you have, just have 5 minutes reading with your children. That's really what we want to promote. We're trying to really, as a school, we love to read to the children. Each of the classroom doors has got pictures on of the books that the teachers are reading.
And we read in the celebration assembly. We start it with the books, so they're listening to that language as well. And it's them knowing that a love of reading doesn't just happen at school, it continues them on into life, and they're seeing different texts and then they're developing that ability to read higher text once they know and they've learned the skills of how to read at school. Yeah.
And we've got recommendations, so it might be Miss Tickle recommends, Mrs. Kendry recommends. So, we all have a favourite author and we all have a favourite genre of book, but it's just trying to expose them to lots of different ideas. I know Julie Donaldson is a big hit, isn't she? Amongst all the teachers. And it doesn't matter how you read to the children, it doesn't matter how many times they hear it, it's just to put that love of reading into their lives. It's the most important thing. And you can go on so many adventures. Like sometimes I'll come into my class and I will say, I went to space last night. And they're like, really? But because I read a story to my children about a spaceman. So, it's just showing them that you can go on so many adventures. There's no place you can't go if you can read a story. And also, again, it's good to, the children need to hear it in their first language. Obviously, in school, a lot of them are hearing it in their second language. But if they hear that same story in their first language, they'll probably have so much more understanding. It'll have so much more comprehension. So any language that you can read a story that your children is fluent in, the more they hear it, then, the better they will be. And also, the more fluent they are in the first language, the quicker it is for them to pick up their second language or their third language. Apart from me, who I can't speak any of the language. So any books will do. I know boys tend to like more comics, superhero books, not to be stereotypical, but they do. I know my daughter is obsessed with leaflets. So whenever they come to the door, she's like, I'll get it. And she likes to read a leaflet about an old people's home. That was the most recent read. Catalogues, especially good to look at this time of year because they all want to have something for Christmas. Yeah. So anything that they can see and read, pictures is reading, is brilliant. Again, they can read the same book. We read the same books over and over and over in school as well. If they pick a favourite one, we let them read it, and we just maybe stop and let them join in. Maybe they get them to say the phrase.
And it's lovely because when it becomes a favourite, that they're really engaged in it, and that language as well is really embedded. They already can anticipate what's going to come next, which is lovely, is that we do promote a sense of once you've read a book, it doesn't mean that that's it, that you automatically go on to a new one. We've said with the pleasure for reading text that if they particularly like one, they swapped it and they want to go back to that one, that they can choose that one again, that's okay. Just really promoting that love of reading and that adventure in a book.
I know my
they
class,
all love this
they
one.
all love this one. If anyone's got any spare pennies, this is called The Leaf Thief, and this squirrel is hilarious in this story, and he keeps shouting. In my class now, you can hear anyone reading it, but he gets worried that someone's stealing all the leaves, and he keeps shouting to this poor bird who's trying to have a bit of an easy time, and he's like, bird. Yeah. But the children across Key Stage 1, you can just hear them shouting, bird. And the wind was, when it was windy last week, they were like, the leaf thief. So they were living it. They'd read the story and they lived it, which is exactly what we want them to do. They were in the playground trying to be bird and squirrel. So that's exactly what we want to do. It's that love of reading. They want to pick it up. They want you to read it again. And that's what we're trying to promote. So at the end of Key Stage 1, the children all have to do a phonics screening check. And there are 40 words on that phonics screening check. We will do another meeting close to the time just for Year 1 parents. Yeah. And the pass mark is normally about 32. Yeah. So it's quite a high pass mark and there's not much room for error. So it's really important that we get the children going, so they stand every chance to be able to pass that phonics screening check. Obviously, then when we pass it, we are checking the year 2s now for fluency, so that that they've got that fluency, they've got that comprehension, that they're passed through that reading gate, and then they should be able to pick up a book and read it. And that is, we've achieved what we want to do. So that's currently where we're at the moment. So the year 2s are currently having a little check on their fluency, just to check that they're actually using all the sounds that we need them to do independently, and comprehension as well, because sometimes they're really good at reading, but then when you ask them, they're like, oh, I don't know what that was about.
So you cover the picture up, do they really understand what they've read? So it's just,
so the year 2s are just having a little bit of a check on those comprehension and fluency skills, and then hopefully they will be off our reading phonics program and onto the spelling program. Year 1s, we are obviously teaching them to be able to pass the phonics screening check and get them fluent at their reading. I think that is it. That's it. We want the children to love reading. So if you have any pictures of your children reading, I'm going to take this opportunity. If there's any photographs, we would love to make a display in our library that we're just currently trying to develop of you and your child, or your child reading a book, what book or maybe you could get them to write their favourite story, and we could put their work up on the wall. So just, we want to try and make it their space, so they know, and we do love books. We just want the children to know that and to reflect that. So I think that's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And just a quick one. Is there any questions out there in internet land? Has anybody got any questions? Use the chat function at the side of the video if you've got any questions. That was great. A nice overview of how early reading and phonics is taught in school. And it's lovely that we're not teaching reading and phonics to be able to pass that screening test. We're teaching it for a love of reading. We want our children to absolutely adore books and want to pull them off the shelf and either read them for themselves or ask an adult to read them to them. So that's great. There doesn't seem to be any questions coming in, but as always, if you've got any questions, Class Dojo is the place to go, and you can send a message to either Mrs. Kendrew or Miss Tickle with all your questions. Anything else that you want to add, ladies, before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. I think that's it.
Excellent. Well, thank you to you both for giving up your time, and also to the parents that have joined us for this evening's presentation as well. And we hope to see you soon. It's Harvest production on Thursday. So if you haven't booked your tickets already, do click on that link on Class Dojo and get your tickets booked for Harvest on Thursday. But other than that, we'll see you again soon, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.